Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Marilyn Shannon. This is the Breaking Free Show. It is Monday. I can't believe August 11th, how time flies when you're having fun. I want to say good morning or good afternoon. Well, I guess it is morning, afternoon. It's evening even somewhere. So whatever I say, I'm right.
Yep.
How are you?
I'm fine. I'm still flying.
You're still flying.
It's having fun.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Freedom. I mean, what can you do, right? So that's
Yep.
Amnon. He's our producer and keeps everything rolling and straight and all that good stuff. And it's a really exciting day. I just want to tell everybody out there, I am about to become a grandmother again. And I am really excited. Second time, I'm having a baby. Don't know what it is because my daughter did not want to know what it is, but my son-in-law knows. Can you imagine? And kept it like a big secret for the last 9 months. But she is due a week from tomorrow. A week from tomorrow actually, but starting to have some cramping, so it could be any moment, which is very exciting. And the funny thing is, I just realized it on the way over to the studio that I have a 2.5-year-old grandson, and when that daughter, different daughter, went into labor, she went into labor during the show. So back then, we were doing the show at 8 o'clock at night, got into my car a little after 9, and I get a phone call that she's on the way to the hospital. She's in labor. And so this show must bring lots of good fortune. That's all I can say. Lots of good fortune. So it's very exciting, and I'm really, thank you for the sound effects. So we're raring to go. We always, as I've always say to you, have great shows. We love, having ideas and things, good things to talk about, chat about, things that maybe we don't always think about, that takes, just heart-to-heart conversations. And that's what we like to have here with our guests. Guests. And today we have a guest who's going to bring us some new information, a word that I had not heard about. Maybe you have, I have not. It's called bio-individualism. She works with the individual on a different level. And we're going to be talking to Traci Phillips, who is the owner of That Certain Way to Wellness. She offers holistic health and lifestyle coaching that assists individuals to find the wellness within by goal setting, action planning, and aligning their core values with the daily choices that they make. And she used the term primary food that we take in is not always about the actual food, but it's what are we taking in on a daily basis, on a monthly basis. What are we taking? What are we consuming as our food? So we're going to be talking to Traci, and I want to thank you all for being here today because I know your time is precious and valuable, and you've chosen to be here with us, so I want to thank you for that. I also want to remark that you are more than welcome anytime during the conversation I have with Traci to call in anytime you like at 919-518-9773, or you can Skype with us at computers, that's plural, to the number 2, K, voice. You would come in on voice Skype, and you can chat with us in our little window. You can go right next to the video that you're seeing, put your name in there, and just open up the chat window and engage with some of the other lovelies that are in that chat. So we'd love to have you come in any way you want. So with that, let me welcome Traci Phillips to our internet stage. Traci, welcome.
Thank you so much, Marilyn.
It's a pleasure to have you, Traci.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited about today.
Cool. So, in your words, what do you do?
In my words, I am a certified holistic health coach. And essentially that means that I am trained very similar to a life coach, but I also studied over 100 nutritional theories. So I come to the playing field, so to speak, or to the table, working with clients with a lot of nutritional background. Because I really feel that that's a big piece, in keeping our cells healthy and well, and able to do what we need to do. But the lifestyle coaching is very similar to what a life coach would do.
Perfect. So do we have somebody on the line? Okay. So if you do happen to call in and we don't pick up right away, just call back again. It's possible somebody else is trying to come in or we haven't gotten to you yet. So just feel free to do that. So you wrote me about this word bio-individual, being individualism. What is that?
So this is something that really sets apart a lot of the work I do with maybe what people have experienced in the past with quote unquote healthcare. A lot of times we'll go in and the doctor is pretty much looking at us in terms of what they've seen before. And so symptoms, which is what is usually looked at, is the symptoms that a person is expressing. And based on different studies and tests and information from past people, the doctor will then conclude what they believe may be the issue. I, on the other hand, don't look at everybody. I look just at the specific individual. So in the beginning of my work with a client, they'll do a health history. So I got some background of their health, where they are currently health-wise, what medications they may be on, what kind of diet that they have. But I look beyond that. And I really feel the premise of the work I do is that everything is about the emotional response we have to that thing. So the emotions in that relationship. So how we feel about our work definitely plays a huge role in our lives. It even impacts the food choices we make. So I'm really literally looking at the entirety of a person's life and helping them to understand better, build awareness around where there may be imbalances in these different areas, helping them to kind of find the power within and the information within to come up with solutions for those issues.
So I totally agree with you about the emotional part. I mean, I think that there's, when people come to me as a coach, I'll say, they'll say, do you do this? Yes. Can you work with somebody? Yes. Do you I can relate, it doesn't matter because you work with a whole person. So
That's right.
So I can totally relate. So when you say, why do you feel that the emotion is the thing? Why do you feel that way?
Well, I remember I did a health history kind of recently with a client, and what really stuck out about this particular one was she was discussing with me her past, which had been a pretty serious eating disorder. And she says, she spent so many years trying to overcome this in therapy and doing various things, and she felt that she had at a particular point in her life. And it was finally time for her to get on top of the nutrition piece, which had always eluded her. So she went to a very well-known nutritionist and got the protocol. And she said, I went home with it, and I remember being so emotionally kind of stagnated. I felt, I knew this was the right thing to do. I knew this doctor could help me. I did believe in the protocol, but there was something else that was blocking me. And when I woke up the next morning, I was just in this state, and I went right back to my eating disorder. And so I think what happens a lot of times is in our desire to fix things, like let's say it's a computer and we rush in and we focus just on the monitor or just on some component of the computer and we try to fix it. What happens is we may end up getting entangled in the wiring. Let's say the wiring is the emotional connections we have with things, and we end up making it worse than it was. So I really believe that energy that taps us in or creates that relationship with a given thing like food, is all about the emotions that we have, the emotion, how we feel about food in general. And so if we leave that out, which tends to be the area that is left out in modern medicine, we're missing the whole picture. We're missing what the relationship is really about altogether.
Right. I this is not exactly the quote, but there is a quote from the Talmud, the Jewish book, the Talmud, and it's emotion travels faster than thought. So
I would agree with that.
Did you ever hear that one before, Traci?
I hadn't. I love that.
Yeah, makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
So with that, keeping that in mind, just getting into the cellular part of the emotion, really getting a handle on emotion, whether it's the emotional triggers, whatever it is, and being able to listen to those senses, the emotional information that it gives off, the senses, whatever that is, to be able to get there first, to be able to, whenever you can, wherever you can get to the emotion, whether it's deep down, whether it's a little further up, whether it's about to just choke you, wherever you can get to it is really important, so that you can work with your emotion. I mean, and as Traci said, you can have all the doing and action things there's tons of it out there. That's not the issue. But if you can't wrap yourself around your worthiness or how you feel about things, then no matter how brilliant the product is or how brilliant somebody is that's working with you, if you don't buy into it emotionally, it's not going to work.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. And so the bioindividualism is really the person realizing that the answers aren't out here. You know, they're not out in front of us. We're not going to get the answers that are best for us by reading a diet book that somebody else wrote, or looking at our neighbor and how they're living their lives. You know, we really need to be able to be brave and courageous enough to go inside and get those answers that we do hold in there. And I think that's what I love most about my work, is that it's about empowerment. You know, there's nothing more amazing, you know, than seeing somebody realize their power, come into this place of going from fear, you know, because we're only really fearful because we don't know. And once we go in there and we see that it's not scary, in fact, it's the very thing that's going to get us, that mechanism that's going to get us from, you know, knowing better to doing better, that it becomes incredibly a powerful experience for us. And so to get people to not look at what they're doing wrong, but the fact that they've been doing everything right, it just may be that what they're still doing that served them in the past may not be serving them now. So it's not about blame or wrong or any of that. It's literally about looking at the present moment and the present needs, and are they being met in a healthful way.
Yeah, and I would add that once you feel that, you know that. I mean, it's like coming home again. It's like right. Look at Traci's face when you say, "Isn't that confirming?" I mean, right? Your face just said it all, Traci.
I agree wholeheartedly. That resonated on a very high level for me.
Yeah, and you know, we've had, I'm sure. I mean, Traci has had her emotional things, her emotional connections to emotion, as I have, and so you know that when you are riding it, you understand and believe in the power of our emotions. And too many people, in my opinion, shy away from it. They often think that, you know, they wear their emotion on their sleeve and they do this and they do that. So, you know, emotion is always too much. And that's not true. It's the ego that gets a hold of the notion of this emotion, Can you quote me on that one? Because that was...
I like that.
Oh, my God, me too. We get a notion of what these emotional experiences are, and we think that it is that when it's not. It's the ego getting a hold of love, or the ego getting a hold of compassion or care or any of those things. But when we allow ourselves to truly feel it, those emotions are never overdone. They shouldn't be overdone. They're only overdone when our ego gets involved.
Right. Right. And our ego was created, actually, I think, you know, if you know, I'm sure you're familiar with shadow work, you know, it's if we also don't want to discount the ego. Right. It's just there's an appropriate place. Right. You know, for each thing. In a fight or flight situation, when we're being chased by something, you know, the protective mechanism is an important thing to have. It's just that we, you know, are applying it everywhere, and that's where it's not serving us. And part of it is that acculturation. You know, we've been acculturated to believe things a certain way, and so we don't even realize that the belief system we may be, you know, putting our information through as our computer mainframe is not even ours. It's not authentic to us. We picked it up because somebody else told us that's the way to do it. But really, the work is in the kind of figuring out, you know, what's mine and what isn't mine, and then taking what's mine to move forward and like you said, embracing the emotion, because it's what's going to tell us everything. You know, it really is our greatest guide.
So I imagine that a great deal of your work is in assisting people, you know, your clients in knowing whose fear, like I say, whose fear are they fearing anyway? You know, you know, whose stuff is it? Is it, you know, is it truly theirs? And maybe, Traci, you tell me, maybe none of this stuff is ours anyway. It's all been passed down. I mean, fear really doesn't exist anyway.
That's right. You know, I love that you said that, because there's actually one of my friends and colleagues passed on a really cool documentary to me called The People versus the State of Illusion. And it kind of outlines what you just said, is that really nothing is reality except for what we make it. It's all an illusion until we decide to pick it up and make it ours. And, it's funny because I was just thinking about that this morning. I was taking the dogs for a walk, and I was thinking about my own experience in life around, how certain things were kind of my understanding or belief system and belief patterns started to be made. And it suddenly occurred to me, it's almost like a magician, right? A really good magician will make you feel like what they're doing is real because we don't see what they're doing behind what we see. So, it's really about their manipulation of the quote unquote reality. It's what they're making us believe, but we take it on as our own because we don't see what they're doing to make it happen. And, I was like, wow, that's a pretty cool thought. And that's one way of also saying, if I was taught a certain way of, a certain relationship with food from, let's say, my grandmother, and that was her experience, and that was her belief system, based on her life and her decisions, but I didn't see all that backstory. I just saw how she was reacting with food, and as a small child started to react the same. That it's now, in realizing this as an adult, wow, I don't need to keep having an imbalanced relationship with food because that's not even mine. That wasn't even my belief pattern. I just thought it was. And so now it's about asking that wonderfully, empowering question, what is mine? If that's not mine, what is my actual authentic relationship with food? Or what do I want it to be?
That is really good. So when you think about it, it's like, okay, they are us, and us is they, really. I mean, we become them, right? And they become us. And so we're all walking this tightrope of this fear that no wonder we're not comfortable with it. It's not ours.
That is probably one of the most brilliant comments. It's exactly it. The feeling of discomfort is that it's not ours. There's something not right. There's something, I always say the same thing as wants. People say, well, I want this and I want that, but I just can't get it. And I say, well, let me ask you something. Do you believe that whoever you're the person in charge, if it's God, if it's Allah, if it's, the universe, whatever you use, do you believe that that entity created wants if you weren't meant to have them? What other reason is there? And let's go further and say that just because you believe you can't have them is because somebody has been telling you that. If your hand is slapped away 100 times from reaching out for something you want, that doesn't mean you're not meant to have it. It just means somebody else determined that you weren't meant to have it. Mm-hmm. And that's their stuff. That's not yours. You're reaching out because it is for you.
Right. It's really interesting because that realization, that clarity that is being expressed by you to a client or anybody that that's listening to us now that recognizes, can connect with the realism, in what Traci and I are saying. It does it really does get you. It really that familiarity with what we're saying, or that matter-of-fact way that Traci is expressing this with love and compassion, but this is so true. That resonates with people on a level that is so true, and that so helps. Chris has asked, she says, I'm curious to know how a person becomes a life coach. How long do you study, and who do you study under?
Well, you probably could answer that question better than I, because I'm not technically a life coach, but we do have similarities. So there are a lot of different programs out there to become a holistic health coach, which is what I am. I went through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is out of New York City. And that was a year program, pretty intensive year program. I felt like I was in med school, really. But there are programs that are 2 years. There's programs that are longer. I know Duke has an integrative coaching program that's an excellent program. So it really depends on the program and the person. Mine was online. There are programs that obviously are, physical schools that you go to. So it really, it depends. But we go through, there is an actual training and there are actual exams that we all take to pass and get certified. So, but it depends on what's right for you. For me, I still had a young child, so doing it online is what worked best for me.
Uh, and Chris is also saying she read your blog about your experience swimming and winning as a child. Can you talk about that here, especially the idea of the fear trance?
Yeah, that's funny because we were just talking about that. I do a radio show as well, and my co-host and I are doing our next one on fear and stress. That is a big one, and it was funny because that was for a retreat, the Happy Mama retreat and conference that I was asked to speak at, and so I was asked to do a blog, and I started thinking about that. I'm like, well, what could I relate to? And it's interesting, and you probably find this to be true with yourself too, Marilyn, is that as I started thinking for my audience, all these past memories started coming up personally. And I thought, ooh, what better place to write from than this emotional stuff? And, that the whole story was that when I was younger, I started swimming competitively when I was about 6, and I was a natural. I was really good. And so much so I became the #1 breaststroker on our team right away, pretty much since at the beginning of starting competitive swim. And so it was something that I wouldn't say I was too young to really take it for granted. I don't think that was even in my mindset at that age. But I just did it. It was natural. I would show up, I would compete, I would win. And then the joke was that they could never find me because I was always off doing the next thing, and which was usually playing with nature. I mean, I remember I really felt I could train grasshoppers at that age. I felt like I had this mind thing going with grasshoppers. And they would find me off somewhere in a field playing with grasshoppers. And it was all about this structure. Get back. What are you doing? What are you doing? You got to get back and, whether it's compete again or to get your award. And it just didn't compute to me. And as I started getting older, obviously that acculturation issue and started to, focus less on my wants, my play time, and more on what I was being told was the right way to be and the right thing to do, I actually started to suffer in my swimming. And as I wrote in the blog, I choked. And it really was about the becoming overly aware of what I was supposed to be, what I was supposed to be doing, how I was supposed to be competing and all of these things, that it was a distraction. It was really a distraction from my authentic ability to perform. And, when I was thinking about that, I started to even go down the road of, as women, or as anybody really, but I know it's a big issue with women and how you're supposed to look. And, one of the things that was really hard for me and why I actually ended up quitting swimming was that I went through a really awkward phase at about 12. I mean, I was not a good looking kid. I had braces, I had acne, my hair was stringy, ugh. And I was very self-conscious, again, because I was paying so much attention to how I was supposed to be, and I didn't measure up to that. And so I finally quit because I was embarrassed. I was just embarrassed to show up as who I was because I didn't feel that it was good enough. And of course, my natural gifts suffered. And so when my daughter brought home a flower last year for Mother's Day, she made it at school, and on the petals were words. And I guess apparently the children were given a big list of words, and they were supposed to come up with 5 or 6 that best described their mom. And the ones my daughter chose for me, it suddenly occurred to me, as I was writing the blog, actually, I was looking at this flower and I thought, if I were to go back as me as a kid, that's what I knew to be true about who I was. And I completely lost sight of that in getting, this feeling that I was less than. And as I now embrace, when I look at that flower, I know those things are true. And it was my daughter, at the age of 6, which I thought was really interesting, who brought that back to me as a gift. Mama, don't forget who you actually are. Because I think with all the distractions that we're given and the fear that is in our media and everywhere around us, that we get distracted from literally who we are and the natural gifts that we have to give the world.
Thank you very much, Chris, for asking her that question, and thank you very much, Traci, for answering that question. Because it's interesting. Because when I'm listening very, very intently, and well, not very intently. I'm listening. So when you listen, it is all that. When you're in your heart, you are just in a natural place. It's when you go into your head, only your head, that things shift. When you start to overthink too much. And that's what happened with Traci in that moment, and I would say, or in those moments. And how interesting that your daughter, so naive and, but not naive in a unwise way, but just so young and, not having carried the baggage can be the messenger. So it's fabulous.
Yes. Well, and I believe they can because of what we were discussing before we went on the air. It's because they're not bogged down with the facts.
Yeah.
My daughter was just reacting to me in an energetic way.
Yes.
She was seeing my shininess, as I like to call people,
right.
Or say to people, I see your shininess.
Right.
And she was reacting to my shininess, and she was choosing words to describe what she saw. And it's what I've carried with me since I was born. It's what we each carry with us since since our birth. And being kind of reacquainted with that was just a wonderful thing. So I thank the people who asked me to write the blog, because I wouldn't have thought about it otherwise, and I thank people like you, obviously, who, allow me to tell that story, because I know we each, there's like you said, that resonance of truth in, our story. We each have that in our own story.
I was telling Traci, when we were just chatting earlier, and I have to tell you, because it's kind of similar to this. So yesterday I was talking to my daughter, who has my 2.5-year-old grandson, and we were talking on the phone, and he wanted to hold the phone. He loves to, play with the iPhone. So he wanted to hold it, and she was holding it. So he was saying, I want to hold it. She said, I'm holding it. It was on hands-free, so they both could talk. And they were going back and forth, and it reminded me of when she was a little girl. So I told her a story that she and I when she and I had an encounter. So she was about his age, or a little younger, and I froze these frozen bananas, and I took them out for us to eat. And she wanted to hold it, but I was afraid she was going to drop it. So I said, no, Jamie, I'll hold it. She said, no, I'll hold it. I said, no, I'll hold it. And she turned around and she said, we'll both hold it. And she was like 2.5. So I got to share that with her yesterday. And I was just, it was such a moment of beamingness, because I got to tell her something that she had forgotten, and I said, Jamie, you both can hold it. There was like silence. And so it was just, it was so interesting how life does those things. Maybe my saying, I was afraid she was going to drop it, had some impact on her in that moment, where she turned around and said, we'll both hold it, but somehow she heard me say, you were going to drop it. And though, that's how things happen. That's how we carry those things through life. So, Traci, how do you see yourself now?
How do I see myself personally now?
Yes.
I have to tell you, Marilyn, it's funny, because I was talking to some people at a social event the other day, and I said to my husband afterwards, I said, gosh, I feel like I'm kind of, uncomfortable, like, talking about how great I am.
Now I'm asking you now, on the air.
And he said, what do you mean? I said, people are asking me, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I do this and I do that, and I'm doing all these different things. And then he said, but isn't that what you're trying to teach the world? Is that we've again been taught, who do you think you are, and you're getting too big for your britches, and all these expressions that have been thrust at us to make us question our greatness. And I'm like, you're right. I'm embodying, and now here I am in a moment questioning, that embodiment of embracing who we are. I also know what I'm not, and I think that's a big part of it, is knowing your boundaries. And be able to have discernment. Mm-hmm. But, I believe all those things about myself. I see myself in an entirely different way. And for me, that's a huge feat, because I was again, like I said, it went from 12 to pretty much the rest. I remember being in my 20s and just feeling so badly about myself, more from a physical standpoint. But just, not wanting to let the world see me. And, I'm not afraid to be seen now. So I'm really happy that, I've been graced with whatever I've been graced with, and that it's really to share with the world. So thank you for asking.
So now, thank you, because I'm going to tell you, I feel great today. I told that to Traci too when we started. But so tell me, how do you see yourself now? I mean, what would you, how would you describe yourself?
I think that I am I'm a very I think I come from the heart. I think that I know that my intention is always to serve with love and honor, and provide a space for healing. And I think I've embodied that. I mean, I truly care about people. I'm a person like you who just loves people. And I love all sorts of people. And because I see their shininess again. And so I think that, again, in embracing my own gifts, to be able to see those things energetically, it's allowed that same thing to come out in me. So I really do believe I also believe I'm a catalyst, for change. I believe that things, I'm meant to have things flow through me for the betterment of everyone. I also believe that, I'm here to help people see that, as we each raise ourselves up, that energy goes towards, it's a ripple effect. As I raise myself up, as I heal my knee, it allows the next person who has knee problems to heal theirs. It really is, we're connected. And so I also see myself as like kind of an individual cell that makes up an entire body. And that, I'm happy being my piece. Let's say it's an arm cell. And I'm happy being an arm cell. I'm not going to try to be a nose cell, and I'm not going to try to be a hair cell. I'm okay being what I am, and realizing I am a very important piece of a larger whole.
And do you like the way you look physically?
I do. I love what God has given me. I'm very grateful for that.
Like, when you think about yourself, what do you love most about the way you look? Is it? I mean, you have beautiful hair, you have a beautiful smile, you're
Thank
like
you.
adorable. But that's me saying it. What do you say?
Thank you. Physically, I love my eyes and I love my smile. I think my style, you said it best. It pretty much projects exactly what I'm thinking about with things, and so I really think that that's a place. But my eyes too, because I think people can see, when I'm talking to them face to face, they can see what, if they're open to it, they can see what I see. And so those are two things that I've not only learned to appreciate because of their ability to kind of, I guess, be a sacred mirror, and reflect to others what it's meant to be seeing within themselves, but that they're also physical attributes that I think are nice.
Yes. Well, I have another question for Traci, but before I do, I'm going to say I love the way I look too. I mean, I feel really good today, and I mean, I don't know, the color. I don't usually wear peach. I usually wear a lot of black, and I don't know, it's colorful. My hair turned out right. I don't know. As I've grown and I've learned different things, I love my body for how it is, how it's changing, how it's growing, the stronger it is. I love how my body, I'm 60 years old, I swim, I walk. I love when I find a muscle somewhere. I love when I think I find a muscle somewhere.
That's right.
Sometimes I'm not sure it's a muscle, but I think it might be a muscle. I love that. I love how, my body is showing up and I'm able to see its transforming and its transformation. I love that. So it's very exciting, when I stare at my toes and my feet, because they're getting thinner. I like touch my thighs, my legs, because they're smoother because I'm working them out. So I see that our bodies can really do something no matter what, because I never had good legs, and any of that. And, I'm happy with being able to have it. What work, Traci, did you do to get yourself where you are?
Wow. That's a big question.
But I bet you I bet you the work was hard, but it's somewhat of a simple answer.
It really is, and thank you for that prompt. It really is. I think I realized that I've always been doing this, but it became an awareness, so now I can do it with intention, is that I'm not afraid to go in. I'm not afraid to go inside, and tap into all the resources that I have in me that will tell me, what I need to do, what's authentic and right for me. And that if I look at all of the most difficult, trying times, I think what I see most is that I really honor every part of it. I really do. I mean, even the people or the circumstances or the environments that challenged me are my greatest gifts. They're my greatest teachers. And I think that gratitude, really serving from a place of honor and gratitude and not being courageous to go in, because really it's the best place to get your information, is what served me the best. And that's allowed me to grow. And certainly support is a big one. I would not be able to have done a lot of what I did in the way I did it without my coaches. And I have my own. So I really think that reaching out for support, being able to tell my story. I mean, Marilyn, I don't think I would have been able to tell that story that I wrote in the blog or even retell. There was so much shame about how I felt I looked. I don't think if I had done this, I would never in a million years be able to sit here, with who knows who's listening and seeing this, know my biggest shame, to just be able to kind of just say it, like, oh yeah, I had acne, I had bad hair, I had, to be able to just say that out, and even to myself in a room, but not much less, the world. That is proof positive to me that I have done this work and it's worked.
You said I'm writing down a couple of things. So if everybody sees my head kind of going like this, it's because there's some things I'm writing down I don't want to forget. So, yes, so Traci spoke about the awareness, about going in and being aware, and how I think there's something about how just like I said about your body showing up, it's how we're showing up that we have this awareness. We open up, whether it's a toe at a time, it's a foot at a time, it's a breath at a time, it's a moment at a time, a second, a day, a month, a person at a time, whatever it is. It's how are you showing up and being aware that this too can change, this too can shift. It's like, do I want to keep this? Do I like it? Or would I like to change it? And not being so attached to the things that you want to change as being wrong. It's those things that you want to change that it's a lightness, it's an enlightenment, and it's like, okay, because that's then you can find the way or the people or the book or the drink or the food or whatever that's going to help you make those shifts. Right, Traci?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, because you're giving yourself the green light. And I think that, again, we've been taught to look at things as negative. I mean, even our gratitude comes in a negative box, doesn't it? It's like we look and see somebody else who is worse off, and we're grateful for what we have. It's like, why do we have to look at it through the lens of worse? And I think what you're describing as I'm hearing it is it's about honor and gratitude for the sake of being happy. I think we really need to let ourselves know, first and foremost, it's not only okay to be happy and to reach for the things that we want, it's what we're supposed to do here. And somehow we got this bill of goods that is telling us that that's not true. And when we really stop and think, it's like, well, if we feel better thinking the way you were just, talking, and we feel worse when we watch the news and think about things in a negative way, which one do we really ultimately think is better? Which one serves us? Would we rather feel down and out about things or look at things through a negative lens, or would we rather look at the potentiality and the fact that we do have the ability to make those changes? But it is about responsibility. That's the other piece I like to say, is that there's challenges there, because a lot of people, again, don't necessarily want to show up. They have also kind of been led to believe that it's supposed to be easier than it actually is.
Yeah. And that it's too hard. And it's not, because, I equate it to losing weight, which a lot of us have had that experience. You have to lose 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 50 pounds, whatever it is, and you're not even conscious of the 5 pounds, the 6, the dress size, until you lose all of your weight. And that's a shame.
Yeah.
That's just not right. I mean, to be able to enjoy the trip is so much better than just waiting for the whole enchilada, because the enchilada is what happens all along the way,
Yes.
It's all that, right? It's all those things.
Right.
And I think talking about these things as openly as possible. Like Traci sharing. I mean, and Suziani said in the chat, Traci, you are beautiful. So
Oh,
to see this beautiful woman who's just radiates beauty, right? To think for 1 second this woman at one point in her life was not, in her estimation, beautiful, is like ridiculous, right? It's like, how is that even possible? But for her to come here and share how possible it was, and that most of us have something in our closet that was uncomfortable, where we hid, whatever, so that we can outwardly share these things, like using the word shame. We give things words, power, meaning, definition. We say that the word shame comes with all of this stuff. When we can share that she had shame, I had shame for things, but it doesn't have to carry the same weight that we've given it. It's just shame, like fear. Here today, kind of gone tomorrow. But it takes work. It takes a commitment.
it takes work
right?
and choices.
And
Yeah,
choices.
absolutely. Making the choice. And I think that's where the awareness comes in. When we're aware of it, then the next stage is, it's kind of like, John C. Maxwell, who's a guru in the field of business and leadership training, says that anybody can make a decision. It's not in making a decision, that you get where you need to go in life. It's how you manage that decision. Mm-hmm. And it's really the choices we make once we become aware of a certain thing that get us either closer to who we are meant to be authentically or further from it.
Absolutely. I agree, totally agree. And Suziani is saying the hardest thing we do is getting rid of our ego. Once we do, and we're not getting rid of it, we're just we're making it our friend. The unhealthy, or the part of our ego really that is like wants to overly protect us by saying, you can't do that, you can't climb that mountain, you can't swim in that pool, you can't eat that food, it'll make you sick because it made you sick 20 years ago. That ego is just wants to be our friend. It wants to know, guess what it wants to know? It wants to know who's in charge. If we give it in charge, it's going to take it. If we take the power and we say, no, you can tell me when you think something's not right, and I'll let you know whether I agree or not. If I agree, thank you for telling me in advance. That's because then that becomes our intuition. But if we don't, if we don't like it, then we get to share that we don't like it and wait for the intuition to come, right?
Oh, wow. I love that, Marilyn.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
You're writing
Traci.
down some of these things. You're going to use them in a book
we
sometime.
have. Yeah, I'm really. This is what happens when you become a grandmother. You become very wise.
Yes. Well, it's more than that.
Yeah, stuff's coming to me right now, so I appreciate the energy that Traci and I are sharing, because I know that there are things coming out of my mouth that I have not said before that are just coming from above, and because we're sharing this authenticity, we've opened up a space for this to happen. So I really appreciate it very much, Traci, for you showing up the way you are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Same to you.
And yes, so I wanted also, there was something, so Traci and I wanted to say this. One of the first conversations we had, and the reason somebody connected Traci and I is because they told me Traci worked with men. And I love working with men. And I wanted to talk some about that because I have always worked with a lot of women, couples, families, whatever, and do work with men, but awareness in working with men or anything is different when there's, as you grow, this awareness gets juicier and juicier. And my awareness now of working with men and my want to work with men has increased and gotten bigger. So I want Traci to kind of expand on why she works with men and what it is about men.
Well, I've always, it's so funny. If I look back to childhood, my first best friends were all boys. I was the girl playing kickball with the boys and it, I don't know. I guess I have an affinity. I was fortunate enough to have a brother. And then also too, I look at my time as a teacher, because I taught elementary school for 15 years before becoming a coach. And I really think it prepared me perfectly for the work that I do in many ways. And the last teaching gig I had was 5 years at an all-boys school. And that was one of the greatest opportunities I think I've ever had on so many levels. But really, as a witness, to watch boys, and at that level of elementary school, I worked with them as a French teacher. I had these kids, they would come in at pre-first, and I had them all the way to 5th grade before they went on to middle school. So I had some time to really develop relationships with the families and the kids, and to see them grow, to see them develop, and to see how each of them authentically developed was really wonderful, and the importance of that. But I think that it was really when I was in school for my coaching certification, or I was getting my coaching certification, I realized, through IIN, my cohort is thousands of people. And in these lectures, these open lectures, and all these people asking questions, I'm like, all these people are women. Where are the men? They're like, where? And I started to really think about that. Again, I'm a life's witness. I see myself as, witness to life. And as a witness, and I had this awareness, and, I started to really go in and ask these questions, based on my own experience. Why do I think that there doesn't seem to be an interest, or if there's an interest, that they just are not coming through and following up on doing things like this? Because, health coaching is about the health. And you also hear this from a lot of women. Gosh, I wish my husband would go see a doctor. I wish he cared more about his diet. Or you hear this all the time. And in my own experiences and others, I started to think about that. I wonder what that's all about. And so when I started reaching out to work with men, I found it fascinating, the feedback I would get. I just started in, question mode, as you do as a coach anyway, right? We just ask a bunch of questions. But what I was getting, it kind of goes back to what we said earlier about emotions kind of being the key piece, that's going to tell us about the relationships we have with each of the things in our lives. And I remember I had a men's group, and we were doing a conference call one night, and I just started around asking the question, where do you see the role of emotions playing in your life? And each of the men shared, that piece. And one of the men said, it doesn't play a role at all. I said, well, could you elaborate on that? He said, I wasn't taught that it was important, and it just isn't important to me. And that really hit me. I started thinking, wow, if I feel that emotions are the portal to our authenticity, what does that mean about somebody who won't look at them at all? And I really have found that in my work, a lot of it has to, again, like women, some of the quote unquote hang-ups that we tend to have as women are things we were taught, we were acculturated to believe. And others are, individual, but there's so much of that, and so much of what a man's role he believes is provider. And the one that, is the fixer, solves the problems. And when you start to really look at all these things, where is there room for failure? Where is there room for, the ability to be vulnerable? I had one man say to me, vulnerability is akin to death as a guy. You're not going to show you're vulnerable in a group of guys like that. Just forget it. It's not done. And I thought, wow, this is really starting to make sense to me. Why it's not that men don't want to show up. It's not that men don't maybe want to be a health coach or get into, this type of work. It's that it kind of goes against the grain of what they were taught to be a man in some respects, or it could potentially. Mm-hmm. And so that's really been, there's so much I could say, but I have gained such an appreciation, because I remember thinking even with the boys that I taught, it's like, they are coddled, and we kind of treat them similarly when they're little. We coddle the girls and we coddle the boys, and, there's really no difference. It's about the, age of middle school, when suddenly it's almost like the boys are supposed to be tougher and kind of in control. And they start to move towards this direction. And again, I'm speaking generally. I don't mean to offend anybody by saying this about every male out there. But again, generalities is that they start to become more of an island, right? That they're supposed to solve their own problems, fix things. And if they don't know, who are they going to go to? They're not supposed to admit they don't know. Who are they going to go to, find out, to bounce things off of? And, a lot of men use their mothers or significant others as kind of that tool. But, they should be able to, like any other human being, be able to grow in their authentic way. And so it's really about getting guys to talk about this, for one. I've been very lucky that the men who have gravitated towards my work, have been those who are ready. And a lot of them are, the typical midlife crisis. They're in that midlife area of their lives, and they're starting to ask questions and just like, things aren't adding up. I just don't feel like I'm not happy. And I need to find out why. And that kind of is the impetus for them to start reaching out. And how they found me has been really interesting. And the various different ways, these clients have found me is really exciting.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and I feel like, men don't know, we're not given sometimes the vocabulary or the permission to use the vocabulary, and a lot of men grew up sensitive men. I mean, they started out being sensitive, just like women, emotional. And then, just like we started talking about earlier, who were they told they couldn't and could not be,
Yeah.
And so and who did they watch as mentors, as role models, So it's very interesting because, when you narrow it down, soul's a soul. So
Yes.
I think it's very interesting. And I do
Yes.
want to just say, I want to apologize. Suziani put something on the chat about the ego, and she, which is interesting. So she said she didn't agree with something I said, which is great. She said, I like what Wayne Dyer says about the ego stands for the edge of God out. Once we come from a place of love and not fear, our ego goes out the window. And she's right. The ego, once we welcome in our heart, that ego goes. There is no reason to have an ego. There's no reason. You don't need it. Yes. There's nothing to have an ego for.
Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah.
Because we have intuition. We do, just like I always like to say, the ego is a human thing. You don't see animals in the wild, with egos. I mean, they have their intuition, right? And if a deer in the forest senses before they see that there's a predator, senses
right.
that there's something there.
Right.
They don't question, whether, should I run? Should I not run? They go with their intuition. And so we have learned to adapt other ways to, quote unquote, save ourselves. But yes, I agree. And that's one of my favorite quotes by Wayne Dyer, is
Yes.
edging God out. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was perfect. I appreciate that. So that's how we could say the ego evolves. I mean, there's always going to be the intuition. It's just how clear, how tuned in are we? And maybe on some level there's always an ego. It's just what intensity, how is it? Is it just going to be there as a reminder, kind of like, I'm here, if you ever need me kind of thing. Oh, no, I don't need you now. I'm stronger. Maybe it's there as a way for us to know how strong we're getting,
Oh, I like that. I like that. And I love what you said earlier about making that distinction. We need to take responsibility, which means drawing those lines of discernment, saying this is okay, this isn't okay. And having those relationships with our ego even, because really, again, it's all about relationship even with the ego. And how are we going to say we're in charge? I'm going to tell you where you play a role in my life. I love that you said that. I think that's wonderful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So tell everybody, we're not exactly out of time, but we're coming close. So tell everybody where they can find you and what they'll find and what you offer.
Great. Well, first of all, I started a group about 4 years ago called Wellness of Chatham. I'm in Chatham County, North Carolina, and I live in Pittsboro. And it's a group called Wellness of Chatham, and it really was a way, again, as a connector, to connect the public with local resources in holistic health care practitioners and people who are in that field with one another, to learn and to share and to just, be a part of one another's lives. And so we have monthly meetings where I have a speaker, kind of like you, where they share what they do and educate us. And it's been a wonderful way to connect people. So if you happen to be in this area, that's a great way to find me, is actually through Facebook and Wellness of Chatham, and get engaged in our little community there. Also on Facebook, I have that Certain Way to Wellness page where I post a lot of things and inspirational things and my own stories. And then my website, which is certainwaytowellness, all spelled out, .com. And I have all the events. If I'm speaking, or my radio shows are all posted there. And also you can contact me directly through my website.
So, and for coaching, they could contact you directly?
Yes, they can, through my website.
And do you coach in person or over the phone or Skype? How do you
I
coach?
do most of mine over the phone, just because of how it is time and being able to meet the demands of all the people we're working with. It's easier. But if there are those circumstances where people just feel more comfortable, I will work that out if that's available. So I can work with people anywhere, obviously doing it through Skype as well. I have some clients who like to see me, but we can't necessarily, we're in different states. So I also do coaching over Skype.
Perfect. So this has been a great conversation. You're going to find our show notes will be posted on MarilynShannon.com very, very soon, within the next day or so. So anything that you might have missed, you can go back and look at it. We'll also have the show on YouTube. So you can go back there and check out the whole show. If you've missed parts of it, certainly I mean, how could you not? When you have somebody like Traci chatting and sharing information, there's always going to be those little nuggets that you want to go back to and listen to again. If I can be of any help to anyone, you can certainly email me, my name above my head. Just click on it and email me directly. Also, every Monday we'll be here at 1 o'clock with wonderful guests, great ideas, tools, techniques, strategies, anything that we can come up with that will help us build our awareness so that we can all experience the freedom that we so deserve. And also every Thursday at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, I do a hangout on Google Plus called Skywire, and it's always something about listening. This week, we're going to be talking about listening and conflict and how we can transcend conflict through our listening. So I hope you can join us on Thursday on Google+. Anybody, you don't have to be in Google to do it. Anybody can do it. Traci, any final little nuggets of anything that you can share?
Wow. Well, first of all, I just have to say that it's been a joy. This is always nice to be able to put out our gifts, and really just to tell people that, if you even feel like you're in that place where you're sensing that, you're not living your life the way you want to, look for support, because you deserve it. I mean, that's really what we're all here to do, is to connect with, the reason I always say it's like the contract we signed to come into this life, our sole purpose. You're meant to do that. So if you feel that you're not in any way, you deserve it. You absolutely deserve it. That's why you chose to come here. So,
yeah, and just kind of piggybacking just another minute on what Traci's saying, it's so much fun to have gone through some of what we're talking about. We personally have gone through. I mean, I have shared numerous times my foo-fas and my messes and my lessons, and to be on this side, to be able to appreciate the things that we're talking about, it really is fabulous. It's a blessing, and it's great, and we all can do it. And yes, it does take time, but when I look back and I think of the time that it took, it's a blip in time. It's just a blip. I mean, who knows what 5 years looks like now, in this moment, 10 years? Who can even conceptualize, when I'm feeling good, what 5 or 10 years might have meant in the learning? So take the opportunities and do what you have to do it, whether it's reading a book, making the choice to eat well today, reaching out to somebody like Traci, myself, other people out here doing all kinds of different kinds of work, reach out and talk to somebody so that you can get that perspective. Because that perspective that Traci can give you is important. She's that person who will say, but have you thought about this? Or the person who will say, good job, because that was really good. And you earned a pat on the back, something that a lot of people are not accustomed to having. So, Traci, thank you very, very much for being here.
Thank you, Marilyn, so much.
It's been wonderful, and thank you all for being here and joining us today. We'll see you next week. Bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, and if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals. ThatVidBlasterGuy.com, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.